The coronation hall. I have been kneeling for 417 days. Ethan Cole spoke so softly that Lady Victoria Vale nearly mistook his words for the hum of machinery beneath the throne. The coronation hall held close to 3,000 nobles beneath a ceiling of black crystal and suspended gold. Ceremonial incense drifted through warm air, its sweetness masking the rising heat from the metal floor below. At the center of everything, Victoria stood on the highest platform in the empire, her violet blue skin luminous beneath ritual light, silver markings glowing faintly along her temples. Below her, Ethan rested on one knee beside the throne's base, a control collar locked around his neck and dark machine oil staining both his hands. Chancellor Marcus Kane observed from the first step, immaculate in white and gold, his expression drawn tight with impatience. The human was ordered to repair the power relay, he said, not to address the future empress. Ethan lowered his palm to the cold crystal floor. A quiet vibration moved through his fingers. Beneath that polished surface ran the palace's energy lines, security channels, oxygen controls, and data arteries. For more than a year, every guard had seen only a silent slave with downcast eyes. None had noticed how carefully he listened whenever a door opened. None had questioned why he always volunteered for the oldest maintenance tunnels. None had understood that a man who repairs every system eventually learns what connects them all. Victoria glanced down at him with mild amusement. Her silver-white hair fell across one shoulder of her dark ceremonial uniform. Perhaps humans count the days because they have so few worth remembering. Several nobles laughed. Ethan did not look up. Perhaps, he said. Kane stepped closer. The control collar emitted a warning click against Ethan's skin. Finish the repair. Ethan pressed his second hand to floor. The vibration shifted. Somewhere far below, a relay answered. I already did. The laughter died. Victoria glanced toward the throne display. Its golden symbols flickered, disappeared, then returned in plain white. Across the hall, the suspended lights dimmed one by one. Music stopped mid-note. The great door sealed with a deep, resonant sigh. Nobles stirred uneasily as their personal devices lost connection to the Imperial network. Kane touched the command ring on his finger. Nothing responded. Restore the system, he ordered. Ethan finally raised his head. He was 39 years old, with short dark brown hair and gray eyes far calmer than any enslaved man's eyes had a right to be. Victoria had seen those eyes hundreds of times, always lowered, always distant. Now they met hers directly. You believed I was learning obedience, he said. I was learning architecture. The collar around his neck clicked. Its red control light turned green. Then it opened and fell into his waiting hand. No explosion followed. No alarm sounded. The silence was worse. Around the hall, every security door remained sealed, but the service passages beneath the floor unlocked in perfect sequence. Fresh air moved through the chamber as emergency systems quietly shifted away from Imperial command. Victoria felt the warmth drain from the platform beneath her feet. What have you done? Ethan rose slowly to his full height. The man she had always considered weak now stood nearly level with her. Despite the steps between them, he set the powerless collar on the lowest stair. Nothing that harms the people in this palace. Kane's face hardened. You are still property of the crown. Ethan looked past him toward the darkened throne. No, he said. I have been kneeling long enough to learn where your empire keeps its heart. The architecture of silence. For 3 seconds, no one moved. The silence inside the coronation hall became something physical, pressing against the crystal walls while Imperial systems waited for commands they no longer recognized. Lady Victoria Vale looked from the open collar, resting on the stair, to Ethan Cole, standing before her. She had watched him carry tools, replace conduits, and crawl through maintenance shafts too narrow for palace engineers. She had never once imagined that those tasks were pieces of a larger design. Chancellor Marcus Kane recovered first. He raised his command ring and spoke into the dead network. Security override. Seal the human in place. Nothing happened. Ethan glanced toward the nearest door. It opened for him with a slow hydraulic breath. The nobles turned as one. Kane's expression became stone. How? Ethan stepped away from the throne base, his movements unhurried, almost careful, like a technician completing a routine inspection. "You gave me access to the oxygen grid after the eastern ventilation failure," he said. "Then the transit relays. Then the palace cargo lifts." He looked up toward the dark ceiling. "Every time something broke, you sent the weakest slave to fix it." Victoria remembered. A damaged climate regulator during winter court. A power failure in the diplomatic wing. A transport gate that refused to open before a state banquet. Ethan had always arrived quietly, worked slowly, and left before anyone thought to ask questions. Kane pointed toward him. "He is bluffing. One laborer cannot control the Imperial network." Ethan pressed two oil-stained fingers against a wall panel. The surface lit up. A map of the palace appeared in white light, then expanded outward beyond the capital, reaching orbital docks, supply stations, and provincial energy grids. Hundreds of small indicators shifted from red to green. Victoria descended one step from the throne. "What do those lights represent?" "Systems no longer connected to control collars," Ethan said. The answer moved through the hall in whispers. "This is sabotage," Kane declared, turning toward the nobles. "The human is destabilizing life support across the capital." "No." Ethan touched another control. New readings appeared beside the map. Hospitals remained powered. Water purification continued uninterrupted. Civilian transit operated normally. Emergency shelters had received additional energy reserves. Only palace surveillance, military authorization, and ownership records were locked. "I separated civilian infrastructure first," Ethan said. "It took 11 months. Victoria stared at him. "You could have opened your collar at any time." "After day 206. "Then why did you wait?" Ethan turned toward the servants, standing along the rear wall. Many still wore active collars. Some were elderly. Some were barely older than the young pages carrying ceremonial banners. "Because escape is not freedom when everyone else stays behind." The words settled over the chamber more heavily than any accusation. Victoria felt the silver markings at her temples brighten. She had always interpreted his bowed head as surrender. Now she understood it had given him a clear view of every lock, every cable, and every person forced to kneel beside him. Kane moved to the central throne console and opened a hidden control screen. The palace core still answers to the crown. Ethan did not stop him. "Try it." Kane pressed his palm to the royal scanner. The console flashed gold, then displayed a single white message. "Authorization denied." A second line appeared beneath it. "Civilian protections active. Ownership authority suspended." Across the hall, collars began changing from red to green, one after another. Soft clicks echoed beneath the crystal ceiling. No one shouted. No one ran. The servants simply lifted their heads. Victoria watched as the last collar opened. Ethan had not raised his voice. He had only changed what the palace was permitted to obey. Then every door in the coronation hall unlocked for him and remained sealed for Chancellor Kane. The first name appeared above the throne in letters 30 feet tall. A servant near the rear wall gasped as the white characters resolved into her own identity, followed by a contract number, a purchase date, an assigned monetary value, and the names of 3 children registered as future imperial property. Another record appeared beside it, then 100, then thousands. The coronation hall filled with light as every suspended display abandoned the ceremony and opened the ownership archives of the Valerian Empire. Lady Victoria Vale looked up at a sky made of stolen lives. Names flowed across the black crystal ceiling, across the throne steps, and across the polished floor beneath the nobles' feet. The records stretched beyond the palace walls, carried through public transit screens, orbital stations, factory terminals, and household receivers across the entire capital. Through the high windows, Victoria saw red light spreading through the city like fire reflected on glass. No buildings burned. No streets collapsed. The empire was being illuminated by its own documents. Chancellor Marcus Kane struck the throne console with his palm. "Shut it down." Ethan Cole stood beside the open service door, his dark work uniform still marked with oil. "You built the system to preserve every transaction forever." Kane turned on him. "I built it to protect lawful ownership. Then everyone should be allowed to see what the law protects." A new image replaced the names above the throne. cargo manifests from prison ships, debt calculations assigned to newborn children, and medical treatments denied because a worker had exceeded his approved monetary value. The nobles began backing away from the displays, as though the records could recognize them. Some covered their command rings. Others attempted to erase personal accounts that no longer answered to them. Victoria remained on the first step below the throne. Her golden eyes moved from one file to the next. She recognized family seals, ministerial signatures, and decrees issued in her father's name. She had attended banquets with the people who approved them. She had thanked them for their service. "You copied everything," she said. Ethan looked toward the city beyond the windows. "I preserved everything you were taught not to notice." Kane activated an independent broadcast device concealed in his sleeve. His voice entered every speaker in the hall. "Citizens of the Empire, a human extremist has seized critical infrastructure and endangered public safety. Remain calm. Imperial forces are restoring order." Ethan touched the wall panel. Civilian system readings replaced Kane's face on every display. Hospitals at full power. Water purification stable. Transit operating. Orbital life support protected. Every figure was visible and updated in real time. Then Ethan opened a public channel. He did not raise his voice. No revenge. No civilian targets. No one left in chains. The words traveled through the capital like a current. Workers in the lower districts stopped beneath public screens. Dock crews set down their tools. Servants inside noble homes watched their collars turn green. Victoria heard the city change without hearing a single shout. It was a sound of doors opening everywhere at once. Kane's eyes narrowed. He invoked royal authorization. "Your authorization," he said, turning toward Victoria. "Your household purchased him. Your seal granted his maintenance access. Under emergency law, complicity is sufficient." Red symbols appeared around her title. On the throne display, imperial succession suspended, royal immunity revoked, detention authorized. The nobles nearest to her stepped away at once. Victoria stared at the order, waiting for her rank to override it. The system accepted it without hesitation. Kane allowed himself a thin smile. "You see, my lady, the Empire survives individuals." The great doors opened behind him, revealing palace guards in white command insignia rather than royal silver. They did not look to Victoria for instruction. They looked to Kane. Ethan crossed the floor and pressed his hand against the lowest throne step. A narrow section of crystal slid aside, revealing a dark passage beneath the platform. Cool air rose from below, carrying the scent of old machinery. "That route leads under the palace," he said. Victoria did not move. "Why should I follow you?" Ethan met her eyes. "Because the empire you believe you own has just informed you who owns you." Beneath the throne, Victoria Vale stepped into the passage because the guards above had stopped seeing her as their future ruler. Ethan followed and pressed his palm against the inner wall. The crystal panel sealed behind them with a soft click, cutting off the gold light of the coronation hall. Darkness lasted less than a second. Thin white guidelines awakened along the floor, revealing a narrow service tunnel lined with old pipes, coolant valves, and dust-wrapped cables. The air was cooler here, carrying the dry scent of stone, machine grease, and recycled oxygen. Above them, heavy footsteps crossed the throne platform. Victoria heard Kane ordering the guards to search every level. "He cannot remove me from succession," she said. "The law requires a vote from the High Council." Ethan kept moving. "The law requires whatever the network says it requires." She followed him down a steep metal stairway, her ceremonial boots striking each step too loudly. Ethan moved without hesitation, turning left at an unmarked junction, opening a sealed maintenance door with 2 fingers. Victoria watched the locks release for him. "How long have you known this route?" 309 days. "You counted that too?" "I counted everything." They entered a corridor beneath the palace foundations. The walls here were not decorative crystal. They were bare black metal, warm from the energy conduits behind them. A low vibration moved through the floor. Victoria pressed one hand to the wall and felt the pulse of the Imperial network. Steady, alive, larger than the throne above it. "Where are you taking me?" "To the room that actually rules the Empire." A security tone sounded behind them. Red light spilled into the passage as a distant door opened. Ethan touched a nearby control panel. The corridor shifted from white to blue. 3 maintenance gates closed silently between them and the search team. No alarms, no sudden force, just barriers appearing in precisely the right places. You could trap everyone in the palace, Victoria said. I could, but you will not. Ethan glanced back at her. You are beginning to understand. They reached a vertical shaft where a cargo lift waited beneath a layer of dust. Ethan pulled the manual lever. The lift descended without registering on the palace system. Through the metal grill, Victoria watched level after level pass in darkness. Storage vaults, water lines, emergency shelters, and service quarters she had never known existed. I was told the lower levels were abandoned. They were removed from your maps. Why? Because people ask fewer questions about places they are taught do not exist. The lift stopped nearly half a mile beneath the throne. The doors opened onto a vast chamber colder than any room in the palace. Rows of black servers stretched into the distance beneath dim blue lights. No banners, no statues, no imperial seal, only data. Every screen displayed numbers, names, debts, labor assignments, medical restrictions, travel permissions, biometric records. Victoria walked forward slowly. One wall carried the records of entire worlds. Another tracked control collars by district. A third measured production quotas against food distribution. This is the central registry, she whispered. No, Ethan said. This is the Empire. A nearby terminal recognized her presence. Her portrait appeared beside a long column of authorization limits. Victoria stepped closer. The file showed her education, her public speeches, her alliances, her approved friendships, her emotional assessments, and her projected obedience index. At the bottom was a monetary value assigned to her political usefulness. Her breath caught. That cannot be real. Ethan said nothing. The system answered for him. Asset designation, Victoria Vale. Succession value, conditional. Behavioral deviation threshold, exceeded. Victoria stared at the word asset until the silver markings beneath her skin dimmed. He recorded me like property. The system does not know the difference between a slave and an heir, Ethan said. Only the price. Above them, Kane's voice entered the chamber through an emergency channel. Return the human, Victoria, and your title will be restored. Ethan looked at her but said nothing. He did not tell her what to choose. For the first time in her life, no law, no title, and no command stood between Victoria Vale and her own decision. The weight of choice. Victoria kept her eyes on the word asset until the letters blurred against the cold blue light. Chancellor Kane's offer still echoed to the server chamber. Ethan stood several feet away near a bank of biometric relays, his hands open and empty. He did not ask for loyalty. He did not remind her what the Empire had done to him. He simply waited. That restraint unsettled her more than anger would have. You knew this file existed, she said. I suspected, and you brought me here so I would see it. I brought you here because the palace was about to close every route above us. That is not an answer. Ethan turned toward the endless rows of servers. It is the part that matters first. Victoria looked again at the display. Her life had been arranged into categories. Approved education, approved alliances, approved public emotions. Even the friends she believed she had freely chosen appeared beside probability scores and loyalty ratings. At the bottom of the file, a line calculated how quickly the Empire could replace her if she became politically inconvenient. She had spent her entire life believing that rank meant freedom. The network had just shown her a more expensive collar. How many people have files like this? Ethan touched the nearest console. The wall display expanded into a map of the capital, then the planet, then the entire Valerian system. Lights appeared by the millions. Everyone, even citizens. Citizens are easier to control when they believe that control belongs to someone else. Victoria walked between the server rows. The air grew colder with every step. She saw family debt records inherited across generations, travel permissions denied without explanation, labor contracts extended whenever production targets increased. A hospital district had lost power priority because its residents were classified as economically replaceable. A farming moon had been charged for emergency food shipments it had produced itself. This is not governance, she said. No, Ethan replied quietly. It is inventory. A new alert opened beside her file. Kane had begun transferring authority from the royal household to emergency command. Her name shifted from heir to restricted political asset. The system requested her location. Ethan disabled the request before it could transmit. Victoria watched him work. You could destroy all of this right now. I could erase the records. Is that not the same thing? No. He brought up a second map. Hospitals, water systems, food distribution, climate controls, and orbital navigation. All of it remained tied to the same network. If I shut everything down, people lose air before Kane loses power. Victoria studied the layered connections carefully. Then why did you begin the revolt before separating them? Ethan looked at her. I did separate them. He entered a sequence. Civilian systems shifted from red to green, one district at a time. Independent power routes appeared around hospitals. Emergency water reserves moved away from palace control. Cargo vessels in orbit transferred navigation authority to their local crews. For 417 days, he said, I rebuilt the empire underneath the empire. Victoria stared at the map as hidden routes illuminated across every world. He had not been preparing a collapse. He had been preparing a foundation. Why wait until today? She asked. Because today the coronation linked every royal archive to a single public network. It was the only moment the truth could reach everyone before Kane sealed it again. She looked at the open collar in his hand. You could have freed yourself months ago. Yes, but you stayed. Ethan met her eyes. Freedom that only saves one person is just escape. The words entered the chamber quietly and remained there. Victoria looked again at the millions of lights. For the first time, she understood the full scale of his patience. He had carried anger for more than a year and refused to let it choose innocent targets. Above them, Kane's voice returned. Your offer expires in 2 minutes. Victoria stepped toward the biometric console. What do you need from me? Ethan did not smile. Your decision given freely. Consent. The biometric console awakened beneath Victoria's hand, projecting a thin ring of silver light around her palm. Ethan watched the system verify that no command code, threat protocol, or royal override had been applied. The network required more than her identity. It required consent. Why? She asked. Because the empire was built on force authorization. Ethan said, the only way to end it is with a choice the system cannot rewrite. Above them, Kane's countdown reached 90 seconds. His voice filled the chamber, smooth, composed, certain. Victoria, step away from the console. The human has manipulated you. Restore your claim, and this incident will be forgiven. Victoria looked at the display containing her life, her value, her conditions of replacement. Forgiven by whom? She asked. Kane paused. It was the first time she had heard uncertainty in his voice. Ethan opened a second interface, showing every civilian system he had separated from imperial control. Hospitals with independent power. Food distribution under local authority. Orbital stations retaining their own navigation. Emergency oxygen. Reserves fully protected. The final layer remained red. Military command, ownership registries, enforcement, and labor controls, all still answering to the central throne. If you authorize the transfer, Ethan said, those systems lose the ability to recognize human beings as property. He continued without pause. The fleet, weapons authorization will lock, but engines, life support, and navigation remain active. The prisons, doors will open by district, with medical and shelter teams alerted first. The noble houses, their private security loses control authority, but their homes keep power and water. Victoria studied him. You planned every consequence. Not every one. Which consequence did you leave uncertain? Ethan looked directly at her. You. The answer carried no accusation. That made it heavier. Kane's countdown reached 60 seconds. You were raised to inherit the system. Ethan continued. I could take your voice code. I could force the scan. I will not. If this changes, it has to change because someone with power chose to give it up. Victoria looked at the millions of lights across the map. For years, she had believed that leadership meant standing above others and deciding what they needed. Ethan had spent 417 days beneath the throne learning how to keep those same people alive when the throne failed them. What happens to me after I authorize it? That depends on what you do next. You're not offering protection. I am offering the truth. The countdown reached 30 seconds. Kane's tone sharpened. Victoria, remove your hand now. You are risking stability of every world under your family's rule. She looked toward the endless rows of servers. They were never under my family's rule. Her silver markings brightened along her temples. They were under your accounting. She pressed her hand flat against the reader. The console requested a spoken declaration. Victoria drew a slow breath. I, Victoria Vale, acting without coercion, surrender all hereditary ownership claims, all succession authority, and every legal power based on possession of another person. The chamber fell silent. The system asked for final confirmation. Ethan said nothing. He gave her no signal, no reassurance, and no command. Victoria understood why. This decision had to belong entirely to her before anything else could belong to itself. Confirmed, she said. Silver light moved from her hand into the network. Across the map, the final red systems turned white. Kane's countdown vanished. When his voice returned, it was stripped of authority. You have destroyed your inheritance. Victoria looked at Ethan as billions of control records began unlocking. No, she said. I have finally refused it. The world after the lock. The first consequence of Victoria Vale's decision was not freedom. It was silence. Every server in the chamber stopped humming at once, and the blue lights between the rows faded to a quiet white glow. For half a second, she wondered whether the entire network had failed. Then the floor vibrated beneath her feet. One system after another restarted under new rules. Ownership registries changed status. Military command requests entered public review. Labor districts received local authority. Across the map, millions of small lights blinked from red to green. Ethan Cole watched the transition without celebration. His gray eyes moved from one data stream to the next, searching for failures. Hospital grids are stable, he said. Orbital navigation is holding. Water systems are independent. Victoria looked toward the chamber entrance. And Kane, still above us, still trying to convince everyone he is in control. As if summoned by the words, Chancellor Kane appeared on the main display. His white and gold uniform remained immaculate, but composure had left his face. Behind him, the coronation hall was dim. Nobles crowded beneath dead screens, while palace guards waited for orders their command rings could no longer send. Victoria, you have authorized an illegal transfer of imperial power. Withdraw your declaration. Surrender the human, and I will restore your title. She stepped closer to the display. You cannot restore what was never yours to grant. Kane's gaze shifted toward Ethan. He has turned you against your own people. Ethan continued monitoring the civilian networks without looking up. He did not defend himself. Victoria understood why. Kane wanted the moment to become a conflict between two men. He wanted her choice to disappear inside their struggle. She would not allow it. Open every public channel, she said. Ethan looked at her. Once you speak, there is no private version of this left. There should never have been one. He entered the command. The chamber walls became thousands of live windows. Workers stood beneath factory screens. Medical teams paused at hospital beds. Pilots watched from orbital cockpits. Families gathered around household receivers across the empire, waiting to hear whether the woman raised above them would ask to be placed there again. Victoria faced the central camera. My name is Victoria Vale. I was taught that this empire belonged to my family. Today I learned that no world belongs to a bloodline, and no person belongs to another person. Kane attempted to interrupt. The network rejected his signal. Victoria continued. The transfer I authorized was voluntary. No human forced my hand. No foreign power seized the throne. I surrendered the legal authority to own, control, price, or inherit another life. The silver markings along her temples brightened as she spoke. If my title depends on chains, then I have no title worth keeping. For several seconds, the Empire gave no answer. Then a palace guard in the coronation hall removed his white command insignia and placed it quietly on the floor. A second guard followed, then another. Across the live windows, factory supervisors unlocked sealed exits. Dock officers transfer authority to local crews. Court clerks began copying ownership records into public archives. None of it looked dramatic. That was precisely what made it irreversible. Kane stared at the guards abandoning his authority. "You are choosing disorder." Victoria looked at Ethan, still standing beside the console in the same oil-stained uniform he had worn while kneeling beneath the throne. "No," she replied. "For the first time, I am choosing without permission." Ethan touched one final control. The doors of the server chamber opened. Beyond them, the passage back to the palace glowed white instead of imperial gold. He stepped aside and let Victoria walk first. She paused beside him. "You could have used my voice without asking." "Yes. Why did you not?" Ethan looked toward the millions of green lights spreading across the map. Because a freedom built by force would only be another empire with better language. Together they entered the corridor, not as owner and property, not as ruler and subject, but as two people walking toward a world that had just been asked to decide what it wished to become, the city without chains. By the time Victoria Vale and Ethan Cole reached the upper palace, the empire was already changing without permission. The corridor lights had abandoned imperial gold for plain white. Doors once reserved for nobles stood open to medical workers, maintenance crews, and servants who carried their unlocked collars in their hands. No one bowed when Victoria passed. No one was ordered not to. For the first time, she understood how different respect looked when it was not demanded. Ethan walked beside her, watching system updates on a narrow maintenance display. Orbital fleets have lost weapons authorization. Engines and life support remain stable. Prison districts are opening under medical supervision. Food reserves are transferring to local councils. Victoria looked toward the high windows. Across the capital, red ownership records still glowed above public towers, but new messages were appearing beneath them. Contract void. Debt inheritance canceled. Movement unrestricted. "This is the fire," she said. Ethan glanced at her. "The records?" "No. The truth moving faster than the palace can contain it." They entered the coronation hall, through the service door, beneath the throne. The room looked smaller now. The suspended gold ornaments remained, but their meaning had drained away. Nobles stood in uncertain clusters. Servants occupied the same floor, without being pushed to the edges. Guards had removed Kane's white insignia and arranged it in a neat line along the lowest step. Chancellor Marcus Kane remained beside the throne console, pressing commands into a system that answered him with silence. "You have no authority here," Victoria said. Kane turned. "Neither do you." That was the point. Ethan approached the central console. The open collar he had left on the stair still rested there. He picked it up and set it beside the controls. Kane watched him with open contempt. "You believe disabling a network makes you powerful?" Ethan connected the collar to the console. "No. I believe power that only functions when people cannot refuse is not power. It is dependency." The main display expanded into a map of the empire. Every military vessel remained active but unable to target civilian zones. Every prison door reported its local release status. Every hospital showed full energy reserves. Every food depot displayed its public inventory. The network had not collapsed. It had changed allegiance. Kane stared at the map. "This cannot hold. The outer systems will turn against each other. Then they will negotiate," Victoria said. "They may fail. Then they will learn without chains." He looked toward Ethan. "And you, what do you gain from this?" Ethan studied the map for one final moment. Nothing that can be owned. A new transmission opened across the hall. Officers of the Imperial fleet appeared one after another, confirming the surrender of centralized command and requesting civilian oversight. Court clerks began publishing hidden archives. Governors released labor registries. One district after another replaced the imperial seal with its own elected council emblem. Kane's face changed as he finally understood the scale of what Ethan had built. The man had not designed a weapon. He had designed a world capable of surviving the loss of men like Kane. "You waited more than a year for this," Victoria said. Ethan looked at the green system spreading across the map. "I waited until anger could no longer reach the innocent." The final ownership registry dissolved from the screen. No explosion followed. No city went dark. The Empire simply lost the legal right to call a person property. Outside the windows, red records faded from the sky, replaced by the names of newly independent worlds. Victoria looked at the empty throne. Ethan's fury had not burned the people beneath it. It had burned every lock that taught them they belonged there. The empty throne. 3 days after the Imperial Network released its last ownership record, the Coronation Hall no longer belonged to a crown. The suspended gold remained above the black crystal floor. The throne stood empty beneath it. Representatives from the outer worlds gathered at the same level as former servants, engineers, physicians, dock workers, and officers who had surrendered centralized command. No one occupied the highest step. Lady Victoria Vale stood near the first row without ceremonial robes, wearing a simple dark coat bearing no royal seal. Chancellor Marcus Kane had been removed from office by the same public institutions he had once controlled, and every order connected to his authority was under independent review. Ethan Cole entered through the main doors rather than the service passage. He wore a clean gray work uniform, though the old marks of machine oil remained beneath his fingernails. Conversation softened as he crossed the hall. He did not look toward the throne. He looked toward the exits, the ventilation readings, and the newly installed public control stations along the walls. Victoria noticed and nearly smiled. Even after changing an empire, he still checked whether everyone could leave safely. A clerk approached carrying a transparent document edged in silver. "Ethan Cole," she said, "the Provisional Council recognizes your release from all Imperial claims and confirms your status as a free citizen." Ethan accepted the document. He read the first line. Then he tore it cleanly in two. The hall fell silent. The clerk looked alarmed. Victoria understood before anyone spoke. Ethan placed both halves on the empty throne. "A person should not need permission to be free," he said, his voice carrying through the chamber without effort. "If this paper can grant freedom, then another paper can take it away." The clerk lowered her head, not in submission, but in thought. One by one, council members began removing the words release, grant, and ownership from the legal draft displayed above them. The new language appeared in plain white letters. Freedom recognized as inherent. No authority may assign human value as property. Victoria stepped beside Ethan. She held the control collar that had once rested around his neck. Its metal polished now, its red light permanently extinguished. "The council asked what should be done with these," she said. Ethan looked at the collar. "Do not destroy them." Several representatives turned toward him in surprise. "Put them in schools," he continued, "in courtrooms, in every place where people may forget what a system can become when obedience matters more than dignity." Victoria placed a collar at the center of the throne. It looked small there, smaller than the laws written to defend it, smaller than the fear that had kept millions silent for so long. Outside the high windows, the banners of the Valerian Empire descended from the towers. No music played. No crowd was ordered to cheer. Across the capital, independent world emblems rose in their place as civilian lights moved through streets that no longer required travel permission. Victoria looked at Ethan. "There is no title that would equal what you did." "Good," he said. "Titles cause enough trouble." "Then what will you do?" Ethan glanced toward the open doors, where repair crews waited beside transport cases and medical equipment. "There are still systems that only know how to control people. I know how to take them apart." Victoria stepped down from the throne platform with him. Neither walked ahead. Neither followed. Behind them, the powerless collar remained on the empty seat, the last symbol of an empire that had mistaken silence for weakness and patience for surrender. Ethan had not burned her world. He had burned the lie that her world could belong to anyone, and